required. I don't know if you all have a copy of the draft, but a draft copy was provided. I have it here in front of me. Just to kind of go through, I'll briefly just explain some of the changes that were suggested. The first change appears under section 6, which deals with the seating. I mean,
Actually, Mr. President, I just noticed, is there an additional apostrophe in 2A? Is that it? See that?
Mondays.
yeah. I'm not sure if that's,
Yeah. See one of,
yeah, I guess.
I don't know that, shouldn't it just say Monday? First and third Monday, in each month.
Yeah,
No S, no apostrophe.
correct.
Okay. And sorry, I'm gonna go to the next one. There's another one in section 3 in the second line. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not great with apostrophes, but I don't know that one is necessary.
Yeah.
Okay,
It looks like a comma was removed from section 4 after it was special.
right. That matters, but, yes, sorry for interrupting, but now section 6.
All right, thank you. So section 6 refers to the seating of council chambers during a council meeting. Obviously, we know that the chambers are undergoing renovation right now. We have changed the orientation of the room. So we thought it made sense here to remove any of the directional verbiage as far as the council table being in the south, the south wall, and the administration being on the west wall, and things like right wing and left wing. So the thought was just to remove some of that language to so that we weren't tied to this specific setup. Section 7 voting, letter D was added simply to provide clarity. It does not necessarily change anything with how we vote or with the required number of votes, but instead just provides clarity that 4 votes requiring a simple majority, that 4 affirmative votes are required, and for votes requiring a supermajority of 2/3, 5 affirmative votes are required. The minimum number of affirmative votes required does not change based on the number of members of council present at the meeting. So if there were only 6 members of council present and a 2/3 vote was required, 5 votes would still be required in that case, because it's 5. It's the votes of the entire council, not those that are present. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sorry again. I just read this a few minutes ago. 2I. So the second part where it starts with, in case of a tie vote, president of council may cast a tie-breaking vote. So president votes all the time. And so is the suggestion that the council president's vote counts twice? Or is it saying that I'm struggling with that one. I don't, if it's a tie vote, the council president's already voted. It would have been tied.
Right.
You know, if it's a tie vote, it's because the council president voted one way or the other and it's a tie vote. So does the council president's vote break that tie in a sense, gets a second vote or has more power than a regular vote? I'm sorry, I just read this a few minutes ago. So
just possibly a way of ensuring that the president votes last. Is that what they're referring to? Because it would be a dead tie at 3-3, and then.
But then you're suggesting that the president doesn't get a vote unless he's breaking a tie.
Or I'm missing, it could be that way. I think it would be 3-3. Yeah.
Or if it was.
I say one person missing is 3. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling with that one. I don't.
I don't think the intention was for the president to get an accurate
Yeah,
vote.
I don't think so either, but I'm just trying to run scenarios through my head and I can't figure it out.
Assistant Clerk of Council,
Yeah, but
can you?
Excuse me, to the chair, but it does say, and this vote shall constitute the 7th vote for purposes of adopting an ordinance.
So that does provide further clarity than it is
Yeah,
Well,
the seventh vote.
you know, I know like the vice president gets to break the tie in a Senate lock on Congress, but
understand, yeah.
that's because the vice president normally doesn't vote. In this case, you know, the president always votes. So, you know, I'm not sure.
But I guess what it's doing here is defining how many votes there are, 7.
Well, it just, you know, a majority of 7 is 4 votes. Like, do you need the rest of that sentence? I'm not sure. That it's necessary.
So Javi, do you have any insight as to why this is?
Sorry.
added that way?
It's just to address the tie situation. You can take it out and leave it out, but it's something to think about in the future. You want to address if it's a tie or you want to just drop it?
If it's,
The only time I see that president would give the second vote is if there's 6 members total at the meeting.
or 4.
Well, quorum is what?
Oh, well, yeah, you need at least a majority.
Or if you have an
so you need
abstention,
at least- Yeah, you need at least 5. So then you couldn't have a tie if you had 5.
No,
But you
four
could have a
is
tie
four.
if there's 6.
The quorum is
It's
4.
4, okay, so then, and if one of them's the president, then there's still a tie. Or are you saying that? I'm going really far down the rabbit hole. If there's 4 and the council president is not one of those 4, does he get to come in after the meeting and cast the vote and decide the?
Because I believe somewhere else it says you have to be present, you know.
We had through the chair, we had a situation where we had an abstention. It was a 3-3 after the president voted. That was just, it didn't pass.
Right, because I think there's a
It could be simple
bylaw
as
that
that.
does, if it's tied, it doesn't pass.
Correct.
Maybe it's do that, so we'll just pass, doesn't get the majority.
Because you have to have a majority.
Right,
Majority of council through the chair, not a majority of present. For example, if you only had 5 members present, this says 3 won't do it. 3 of 5 is a majority of 5, but not per the bylaws. You still have to have 4
And if there's only 4 present, you have to have all 4 of them vote for it.
you have to be unanimous, right?
to be. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, through the chair, suggest that we eliminate the president voting twice.
I'm not suggesting that was the purpose. Come on, Jason, what are you doing? Kidding, that wasn't, I'm sure that wasn't the purpose, you know, again, I was trying to puzzle that out and I couldn't figure out a way that.
So Dennis, are you suggesting then just eliminating 2I altogether?
We need to have I language about 4 votes.
After 4 votes. If that's the intent of the council. Like I said, that means if there's 5 members, you still need 4.
Because I think in number 3, you talk about 2/3 is a minimum of 5 affirmative votes are necessary. Couldn't you just say, take that phrase and put it into the majority of all 7 members of council, a minimum of 4 affirmative votes are necessary. And then you just.
Yeah, that would be good. You could do it that way.
So in section 2I, majority of all 7 members of council.
I think you just duplicate number 3. And change the words to, you know, fit in, you know, whatever. So where number 3 says a vote of 2/3 of all 7, we're a vote of 2/3, and then you could say we're a vote of a majority of 7 members of council are required by law, a minimum of 4 votes or affirmative votes are necessary.
Correct.
Just replace D2 and D2 is pointless. Altogether, right?
You could just change that whole thing, just make, copy 3 and change the words to make them.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions about section 7 voting? All right, under section 8, I don't think there's any changes under section 8. Section 9, Section 10, and Section 12 all had a minor change with regard to, they all refer to the auditor. So it's been proposed to change those to say the Director of Finance as a result of the November election. The Department of Finance was created. Under 17, sponsoring legislation, it does say that legislation may be introduced by any member of council or the mayor. Then it goes down to say that legislation from any other department or person shall be referred to a committee for study. The thought was to add further clarification, just identifying that the legislation still would have to be introduced by a member of council or the mayor, not by just any person.
Chair,
Yes.
when legislation is introduced, how will we determine the part of legislation that it was not introduced by so-and-so, but the department initiated it then? Yeah.
It would be rare that they would go directly, outside the normal process. I can't really imagine a situation where that would happen.
We had a situation like you're gonna have to where if I remember the public introduced something.
Yeah, the golf cart thing.
So I sponsored that.
Just recently.
It was about a year and a half ago.
So
All right, thank you. Makes sense.
Section 18 is the reading legislation. So under number 3 there, again, this refers back to the November election where the voters decided to amend the city charter to no longer require posting legislation on a bulletin board in the lobby at City Hall. So we are just adjusting our bylaws here to reflect the decision of the voters. Section 19, committee reference. As you know, right now, when a piece of legislation is referred to committee, the report of that committee is then due back to council within 60 days of reference. Seeing as how we only meet twice a month, and sometimes that time frame can get a bit tight. And so, especially depending on the nature of the proposed legislation, for research and to get questions answered and things of that nature. So the proposed change to the bylaws here would be to say the report would be due at the next city council meeting after 90 days of reference, just to provide a little bit more time for discussion of a particular piece of legislation. Section 20, committee meetings. The line right now reads that committee meetings shall be arranged prior to meetings with the clerk of council in order to avoid scheduling conflicts. And, I think many of us prefer to hold committee meetings on the same nights as council meetings, but I don't think that's necessarily a requirement. So to just kind of clarify things, we were proposing changing the language to say committee meetings shall be arranged with the clerk of council in order to avoid scheduling conflicts, and just kind of leave it at that. Section 21, correspondence and reports from the administration. Again, the auditor appeared there a couple of times, so those were changed to say the director of finance. And the deadlines for the reports for both the director of finance as well as committee reports was updated to just simply be 12 noon on the Thursday prior to a regular council meeting. The third and fourth sentences also that you see some changes there in red. It currently reads that if the report is defeated and a minority report is then offered, a motion to accept the minority report is in order. No minority report will be entertained without a corresponding majority report. Those sentences are a bit confusing, so to kind of clear up any potential confusion and to add clarity, the proposal is for it to read instead, if the report is defeated and an amended version of the report's recommendation is then offered. A motion to accept the new recommendation is in order. No changes to the report will be entertained without a corresponding majority vote. Questions?
think that happened once. I can remember. And people. I think it was where the issue was defeated in the committee. And the people who were voting to approve it wrote a report. Like basically like a dissent in, in legal cases, dissent gets an opportunity to chime in, offer their opinion, but I think that's where that came from. But anyway, just throwing that out there. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Section 22 is correspondence policy. This was previously not in the bylaws. It was a separate standalone policy. So this is just simply putting our existing correspondence policy in the bylaws, just so we kind of have everything in one place as opposed to it being its own standalone policy. Let's see. So because the correspondence policy was then inserted, the additional changes throughout the rest of the document are just updating the numbers to keep everything in the right numerical order without duplicating any numbers. Oh, and there's one more director of finance, one more auditor in section 20, well, formerly 28, now 29, the close deadline. Refer to the auditor's financial report, so that would be updated to say the director of finance's financial report.
Mr. President.
Mayor?
Financial report differs from the other report in section 21. Are you talking about the audit report versus any report that they would give at council? Because the times and dates are different. And that's, I want to make sure that we're talking about two different things. So in 21, that first section talks about the director of finance report shall be in the office no later than 12 p.m. on Thursday prior, and this one says 4 p.m. Friday.
And why is it addressed twice in there at all?
Right, that would be, I don't know if there's some reference to a different report. There's that monthly financial report that's given. Right. And then there's always the verbal report that could be given.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to figure out what the distinction is.
Do you happen to know what?
So, for the part that's under for culture deadline, the financial report, that stays for Friday at 4 p.m. because it gives her time to actually get everything in by Friday. Sometimes because of numbers, she can't do it till maybe that Monday. But for the correspondence and reports, I can see how that can be confusing. But it does look like just that department's report, separate from the financial report, if there was anything extra.
Okay, do we want to add then in that 29? Do we want to add the word monthly right after director of finance's monthly financial report? So that way we
Differentiate them between.
Yeah, just for further clarification. Right?
And also you can remove it too as well.
Yeah, that's the other
Does
thing.
not provide- The financial report you want to keep, but the departments, the director of finance report. Remove.
So you're saying from section 21, remove that.
Remove, our correspondence and administration reports, with the exception of the director of finance, financial report. And we could just reiterate what's in the last one, or just take out mentioning the finance report period completely. For the whole paragraph, the first paragraph.
The whole paragraph under section 21. You're suggesting would just be removed.
So all the correspondence and administration reports, and then remove with the exception of the director of finance report. And then leave shall be received by the clerk's office no later than 4:30 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the regular council meeting. And then remove
And
the
then
last
the last
sentence.
sentence as well. So then the first part of section 21 would just read all correspondence and administration reports shall be received by the clerk's office no later than 4:30 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to a regular council meeting. Just leave it at that. And then section 29 is referring to the monthly financial report that is provided by the director of finance. Any additional comments or questions?
Mr. President, going back to section 19, I just wanted a quick clarification. The second last sentence says any report or study must be made to council in writing at the next city council meeting after the 90 days of reference. Should it say within? Because it will be after 90 days, then you have to introduce it. Clarify it, or no later than maybe clarify that. I'm just asking it. The wording seems to be clear on that.
Well, the idea was to allow 90 days to pass, and then at that next, whatever the next meeting is after those 90 days have elapsed, that's when the report would have to be presented back to council. You could do it before.
But through the chair, sometimes the committee may not meet within the next 90 days to have a committee.
I think the idea was to force them, because right now it's only 60 days.
Yeah.
But this was to give additional 30 days to that process. So the problem, Mr. Winkle, is the within word could force you to get less than 90 days. But the word after says, because it comes at the next city council meeting after the 90 days. So once the 90-day clock is over, you have to bring it back to council at that very next meeting.
We are going to wait the 90, it's not within, it's
Right. Yep.
I just want to make sure that,
Maybe we're
That works.
sending an
yeah, no, I get the 90 days, I guess, so we're kind of, it's not, you aren't racing to bring it within 60, you're waiting to do your process in 90.
Yeah, I guess the 60, I think, did say within, so now you have less than 60.
There's always a clock to race, sometimes we barely make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
So this now gives you
Thank you.
90 plus a couple of days.
Thank you.
Depending on when it's over.
Any additional comments or questions?
Nope.
Well, yeah, so obviously we've made some additional changes here tonight, so I think in keeping with our bylaws, we will, I will make a motion to send this back to council with the additional changes that were discussed this evening.
Second.
The motion was made by Jacobs and seconded by Winkle to send the bylaw changes back to council with the additional amendments that were discussed this evening. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Swink,
Yes.
Booth. Yes. Havens.
Yes.
Winkle.
Yes.
Haywood.
Yes.
DeVries.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, everybody. With no business for the committee this evening, meeting is adjourned.
So we